And speaking of smoke, the FDA is moving to ban menthol cigarettes, but as more than 85% of black smokers use menthols, could this also lead to another avenue for aggressive policing? I think this is something that, some of us in the community are concerned about, because you remember this is what happened with Eric Garner. He was accused of selling Lucy's and was killed after that. So, Jassy, I'm curious your thoughts here. It makes me a little nervous. The FDA is saying, no, we're not going to target people, but the FDA is not going to be on the ground policing these things. How do you feel about this ban, and how might it impact not only the black community, but the Native American community as well?
First, my father was in Vietnam, and he said he could always tell where the black soldiers were, the black GIs were, by, he smoked Cools, and you knew where the menthol cigarettes were. Oh, okay, I'll go over in that direction because the food's a little bit better over there. It's something, it's always reasonable to be wary about police enforcement in black and brown communities, because it seems like any impetus given is going to be an excuse for over-policing. We just talked about Rudy Giuliani for the stop and frisk policies, or something that is going to lead to more convictions, more incarceration to black and brown communities. That said, I have to say I'm very, very optimistic, and I think that this is overall a positive move. Absolutely, we should be wary about the enforcement of the said laws, and whether or not it is focused on manufacturers, it is focused on the cigarette brands as opposed to the individuals. But I think it's a positive move for public health generally. Cigarettes are nasty. I'm sorry, no judgment to everybody. Again, I come from a smoker family, but cigarettes are just disgusting, and they disproportionately are targeted. They're focused on our communities and our youth, and have a terrible, terrible effect on our lifespan. So I think overall this is a very positive move, and I'm glad that it's happening.
Aaron, I'll tell you, my mother was a smoker for years. She tells me she doesn't smoke anymore. I pretended to believe her. But she smoked Newport. That was her brand. So it was a lot of my family, actually, that was their brand. So I agree with Jassy. This is a healthy move. Again, I'm just concerned with the policy and how it's being enforced in the community. What are your thoughts?
Well, look, Tiffany, a lot of black folks know, either know or were somebody who smoked menthol cigarettes at some point in their lives. Like this is definitely a part of black culture. To your point, that stat, 85% of black folks, are menthol cigarette smokers. And so, while yes, I certainly agree with Jassy that a ban on menthol cigarettes is a great idea, like a ban is not enough, right? If this was an industry that was invested in getting black folks hooked, what is their commitment to helping them quit, right? I mean, punishing and criminalizing folks for their addiction is not a good idea. I would hope that is a lesson that we have learned, certainly in this opioid crisis, and certainly not to compare, drugs. But what I would say is that our response to addiction has been lopsided, particularly in terms of race. And so I would hope that we wouldn't make that same mistake again around this menthol cigarette ban. If we're not, they're going to ban it, but they shouldn't criminalize folks who are addicted to menthol cigarettes, because we know that they are very addictive, particularly in specific communities.
Yeah, you remember in all the movies, after all the sex scenes, somebody would be lying in bed smoking a cigarette. It was made to look cool. I don't think we're going to see it. Jason, our movie lover, I'm sure would agree with you. But yes, this was integrated into our society, right? The images and the optics of cigarette cool was an American kind of myth. Yep. So I don't think we'll be seeing too many cigarette smoking and love scenes now, because for millions of Americans, COVID has killed the vibe, if you know what I mean. A new study by Indiana University found 40% reported having less sex during the pandemic, and new Census Bureau data shows the U.S. birth rate has declined dramatically. I surmise, my friends, that these two things perhaps might be related. Jason, I'm going to drill you on this on our IG Live after the show, but I'm coming to you on this. I'm coming to you on this, my friend. Let's talk about sex, in the words of Salt and Pepper. Do you think that these two things are related? And you and I have talked about this, that younger people, millennials and Gen Zers, they're allegedly not having, as much sex. And there are people who told me when I talked about this, that's not limited to younger people. I'm curious your thoughts on it.
Look, as the R&B singer says, you know, people think they invented sex. No, like these things have happened before, right? Like when you have major economic downturns, when you have public crises, there often is a point where people just ain't really in the mood to kick it, and then it all sort of comes back. I mean, trust me, people talk about a hot summer this year. It's probably going to be 2022. Right? It's 2022 when things are really, really open, is when people will be financially, emotionally, psychologically, they will have knocked off the COVID-19, so to speak, from the pound perspective, and might be more interested in it. So I think that is a legitimate part of it. But the bigger issue is this, quite frankly, you know, Tiffany, people's notions of what is sexy and what is attractive and what is appealing have begun to change, right? People don't drink as much, which was a huge lubricant to people having sex both responsibly and irresponsibly. Ideas of consent, thank goodness, have changed, which means people have a lot more agency in how often they're having sex. And then, frankly, access to pornography has also had a dimming effect on lots of young people being able to enjoy sex in the ways they have. And there's lots of sociological studies on this. That's one of the reasons that we've seen all these increases in commercials about sexual dysfunction and everything else like that for men as young as their 20s, because people's increased access, men and women, to pornography. So I think it's a bunch of issues.
Yeah, we are out of time, but I wanted everybody to be able to weigh in on this subject just really quickly, because I want to put Aaron on the spot. Aaron, do you have any quick thoughts on this subject?
Yeah, I mean, my quick thought is babies are expensive. None of this is happening in isolation. Your grandma didn't have student loan debt. She could maybe, you know, she and grandpa could maybe get a house. People are getting married later, right? This is about pay equity. This is about the wealth gap. I mean, having a baby is not cheap. That is my takeaway from this, and that might have a lot to do with why these younger folks are thinking, I don't know, maybe not the best time to be starting a family.
All right, Giassi, you will have to come back for our next panel on sex, because I wanted to get your thoughts on it as well. But we're way out of time. My producers are yelling, we got to go. So thank you so much, Giassi, Jason Johnson, and Aaron Haynes.